so as much as the guitars and the amps and the guys obviously playing them and the microphones and all that have to do with the sound of Beatles records, one of the more important things, and the reason I started this channel, was to kind of emphasize some of the very simple techniques they used and practices to make the record sound really great. You know, and you realize how basic so many things were for them in 1966 compared to what we have today. It's pretty bananas. So this is my like scratch session I did when I was, you know, I built a song so that I can show you these guitar parts. So I'll just show you what I've got going on. I've got buses happening, first of all, with vocals, which we're not really focusing on vocals too much on this video. But I have, so I ran the drums through a 660, which I have an Unfair Child, which I love dearly. And it is phenomenal. And so when I tracked these drums, I just ran them through it and got a sound I liked. And, you know, I'm going to do a drum video with Brendan, so this is just really quickly what it sounded like going through the Fairchild. And that's 3 mics summed through a Fairchild with EQ on each of the mics, and then I EQ'd and then compressed them again here in this bus. I love what Fairchild does to kick drums, and especially when there's a cymbal on top of them, it just kind of does this like implosion where things just go fall apart, which I'll show you on She Said in a second. Carrying on to guitars, so just to let you guys hear this, there's some debate on the first, you know, the guitar on this, and if it's maybe what amp it is, maybe what guitar it is, if it was George, if it was Paul. We've talked about this. So I did a scratch with a D20, which is what would have been on Paul's Bassman. And I also did one with the U47. So like this is, where am I? There's with no plugins. So like I really hear. I hear these mid-range freaks. And go back to the red desk just to thin it out a little bit, because it's very punchy. And then the J37 always helps. It adds a little mid-range punch and saturation and compression. I use no compression going in. This is the D20 with a Red 47 preamp going in, not to a Studer, but in the Pro Tools. And so we're, you know, emulating kind of what we would have going on in Abbey Road. And I did a mono mix. Rhythm guitar, kind of same thing. So, you know, it's, let's see, it starts a little later. Just basically to pull some of the lows out, because it's a very, you know, for it being a mic like a U47, it's which is what they would put on the amps, is what would give you a lot more information than maybe you needed. So I cut out. They had low cuts, I think, in line and on the microphones and in different points of the chain at Abbey Road. But so I'm pulling out kind of the lows here a little bit to kind of let that shimmer happen. And it was probably compressed too going in. You know, I know it was standard probably for some guitars to have compression going in on rhythm tracks on the tape machine on the Studers. So I think Norman Smith used the Altex because they came along before the Fairchilds did on Beatle records, and there's a good chance that Jeff was probably using one of these on guitars. I don't know. On the basic rhythm track itself, who knows? Maybe the whole thing's even got a Fairchild on it. But altogether, let me mute the vocal. Oh yeah, check these out. Just some more dorky Revolver recording stuff. I try to emulate. It's a tape echo on the tail of these with ADT, so it sounds like paperback writer. It's got this great kind of almost stereo flange kind of phase sound to it. Paperback writer, if you really like. Let me let you hear. Paperback writer. I love it. I'm going to use that on everything now. If you guys want the settings for this and the plugins, I will put a Dropbox link for some of these settings in the description of the video below. Paperback writer. Love that. And it's a completely dry vocal. So, madam, will you read my book? It to me is to write. Will you take a look? And I got the vocal going through a bus here, so I'm just cutting, about 150. I kind of just went off of the recording, and they cut vocals pretty high at that point. It wasn't until a little later where they opened them up slightly. I feel like even to me, like Let It Be was a departure on a vocal sound just because it was a different person or a different process. And even though they were kind of technically using inferior mics on Let It Be, I feel like the vocal sound is kind of better than some later Beatles stuff. So this has got a couple things. So it's got a low cut. I got the red desk. I'm also Fairchilding, but I Fairchilded going in as well. And then I've got the boost as well, the brilliance. So, dear sir, madam, will you read my book? It to me is to write. Will you take a look? Maybe to my ears right here that I wouldn't add that 2.7 to the vocal, because to me right here it kind of sounds harsh. But in the mix, it really makes a difference. And then I'm basically, I got a low cut in the bus and a slight boost on the pop. And this is the all Paul vocal bus, so this is everything. And then the Fairchild catches, this would have been a 660, and it is in stereo, but it's not because everything's mono. So, dear sir, madam, will you read my book? It to me is to write. Will you take a look? I mean, it does sound pretty good. It's not that harsh. Let's check it out without that boost. Sir, madam, will you read my book? It to me is to write. Will you take a look? It's like, oh yeah, that kind of, it sounds like nicer and maybe more like natural, but that 2.7's, if it's not too sibling, is a cool way to get a vocal to pop out. Leave it to Abbey Road to figure that out. I feel like these little boxes did a lot of guitar and vocal, and maybe some kick drum too, because you start to really hear at this point, which we'll go through in the drum video, there's a lot more attack on the kick and high end, which is something we haven't heard on a Beatles record before. But Revolver, we do. Bass. Yeah, I'm adding the TG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even though they weren't using them at this point. It just has such a sweet low end, so my D20 is not the greatest. It's probably a little bit on the thin side, so the bass usually needs more help than I can give it in the recording side of things.